My name is Helen Carter. I'm 59. I'm a widow and I live in a quiet neighborhood in Oregon. For nearly 2 decades, I worked as an office manager at a law firm. I raised 2 children, Sophia, who just turned 32, and Daniel, who is 29, and spent most of my adult life making sure they would never have to struggle the way I did. Last Tuesday, I received an email that changed everything. It came from Sophia. No subject line, just her name in my inbox. I smiled before I opened it, thinking it might be a quick update or a sweet note about the wedding. We had just spoken about her plans a few weeks earlier. I had already contributed $30,000 to help book the venue, secure a photographer, and reserve the florist she'd loved since college. When I opened the email, the smile vanished. It didn't begin with "Dear Mom." It began with one single word. Mom, like a label. Sophia explained that she, her fiancé Michael, and his family had finalized the guest list for the ceremony in Napa Valley. After much thought, they'd decided it was best for me to watch the wedding via live stream, not in person. Michael's mother was particular about the guest count and wanted to keep things intimate, she wrote. At the end, she added a line that felt like salt in an open wound. If you want to be a part of it, you can watch through the Google Meet link we've created. It should be just like being there. LOL, LOL. I stared at that screen for a long time. My coffee went cold. My hands didn't tremble. I didn't cry. Something inside me shifted, quietly, like the ground cracking beneath my feet. And yet I was still standing. I replied with 4 words. Sure. Enjoy your big day. No emotion, no argument, a quiet withdrawal. Even then, I knew those 4 words would echo louder than any scream. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to beg. I wanted clarity. I wanted the silence to speak for itself. I closed the laptop, finished my now cold coffee, and got ready for work like it was any other Tuesday. But it wasn't. That was the day I stopped pretending my sacrifices meant anything to my daughter. That was the day everything began to change. The drive to the office was quiet. Oregon's early spring air held a chill, but I barely noticed. My mind circled the same question. How did we get here? I spent 18 years at Caldwell Walker Law. It isn't glamorous, but it is stable. And stability was what I needed after my husband died suddenly when the children were teenagers. I remember standing in front of our old washing machine with bills spread across the counter, trying to figure out how to pay for groceries and Sophia's college deposit. Back then, I didn't think twice about giving up weekends. I took extra shifts, canceled vacations, skipped birthdays. I told myself, there'll be time for me later. There never was. Every penny I saved went toward Sophia and Daniel. When Sophia changed majors twice and needed extra credits, I paid. When she moved across the country for a short-lived job in New York, I covered her deposit and plane ticket. When she cried through a breakup at 27, I flew out, held her hand, and made tea in a kitchen that didn't feel like home. When Daniel wanted to buy a house with his fiancée, I co-signed the mortgage and wrote the first $10,000 check without hesitation. I never kept score. That's what mothers do, right? That email made me feel like a transaction. Useful, then disposable. Like I had a shelf life, and it had expired. Back at the office, my boss James stopped by my desk. He's one of those rare people who remembers birthdays and how you take your coffee. He noticed something was off immediately. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, setting a latte from the cafe downstairs on my desk. I wanted to tell him, to say my daughter had disinvited me from her wedding. But instead I smiled and said I hadn't slept well. He didn't push. That small act of kindness, that quiet cup of coffee, nearly undid me. After all the noise in my head that morning, it reminded me that I still existed and that I still mattered, even if only quietly. Around lunchtime, my phone buzzed again. Sophia's name lit the screen like a spotlight I didn't want. Voicemails, texts. "Mom, please answer. We need to talk. This isn't funny." I didn't listen to any of them. Not yet. I sat there, sipping my latte, and thought maybe it was time to stop being the one who always answers. Maybe it was time to stop playing a supporting role in someone else's story when they wouldn't let me on the stage. That afternoon, I made a decision that shifted the ground beneath all of us. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to do something far more powerful. I was going to act. After work, instead of driving straight home, I stopped at First Federal Bank, just a few blocks down from the office. Carlos, the branch manager, had always been kind to me, helped me set up college funds, retirement contributions. He even greeted me by name. "Mrs. Carter," he smiled, standing to shake my hand. "What can I do for you today?" I sat down, placed my purse gently on the floor, and said calmly, "I need to cancel a wire transfer." He blinked. "The one to the Napa venue?" "Yes," I replied. Carlos hesitated, concerned. "There may be a cancellation fee depending on timing. May I ask why?" "The circumstances have changed," I said simply. He checked the system. "You're in luck. It hasn't processed yet, just in time." "Are you sure, Mrs. Carter? $50,000 is a significant amount." I nodded. "I'm sure." That $50,000 was supposed to be my next payment, on top of the $30,000 already gone. $80,000 for a wedding I wasn't even allowed to attend. I signed the forms and walked out of the bank without a second thought. By the time I got home, my phone had blown up. 9 missed calls from Sophia, 2 from Daniel. One voicemail from Sophia said only, "Mom, please, don't do this." I turned off my phone. In the kitchen, I reached for a bottle of red wine I'd been saving since last Thanksgiving, one that I never opened because Sophia had canceled her visit at the last minute. I poured myself a glass, stepped onto the porch, and sat in the fading sunlight. The world around me felt so still. Birds chirping, a neighbor's dog barking, while inside me, memories crashed like waves. All the birthdays I'd planned alone. The holidays where I pretended I wasn't waiting for a call that never came. The shoes I didn't buy. The car I drove for 14 years. The vacations I postponed. All the small sacrifices nobody noticed. And then I thought about Michael's mother, Sophia's future mother-in-law. A woman who barely knew my daughter, yet her opinion outweighed mine. She had decided what family meant. And apparently, it didn't include me. Sophia's last email had even signed off with LOL, as if watching her own wedding on a screen was some kind of joke. And finally, I thought about myself. Not as a mother, not as a widow, but as a woman. What did I want? Peace, dignity, a life that didn't revolve around being useful only when people needed money or favors. That night, around 9 p.m., the doorbell rang. It was Daniel. Still in office clothes, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. He looked uncomfortable, holding his phone like a shield. "Mom," he said, stepping inside. "Why aren't you answering your phone? Sophia's freaking out." Hello to you too, I said calmly. He sighed. She says you're not coming to the wedding now. That you're being difficult, I laughed. Difficult? For not attending a wedding I was uninvited from? Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Michael's parents are footing most of the bill, Mom. You know how traditional they are, I raised an eyebrow. Traditional? Daniel, I already paid $30,000. I was about to give $50,000 more. That's not tradition. That's a buyout. He froze. Wait, you were sending another 50? Was, I corrected, sipping my wine. Not anymore. Daniel's face went pale. Mom, they're counting on that. The venue, the food, not my problem anymore, I cut in. His voice rose. Of course it's your problem. She's your daughter. And I'm her mother, I said quietly. A mother who was told to stay home and watch from a screen. He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. You always make everything about yourself. And that was it. That was the breaking point. Get out of my house. What? You heard me, Daniel. Mom, no. My voice was calm but firm. I've given everything I had. I'm done being the villain in a story I wrote with love. Daniel stood there for a moment longer, then turned and left. The door closed quietly behind him, but it felt louder than any slam. I stood in my living room, heart pounding, and realized something startling. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The next morning, I woke up to 43 missed calls and a stream of frantic texts from Sophia. They started passive-aggressive, then they turned into guilt trips. The first one said simply, Mom, we need to talk. Why are you doing this? This is childish. Then the tone shifted. The venue just called. The payment didn't go through. We're going to lose everything if we don't pay by tomorrow. Michael's parents are furious. They said this proves they were right about you. At 3:24 a.m., she said, I don't understand why you're doing this to me. I smiled into my coffee. Of course she didn't understand. Sophia had grown up with my sacrifices woven so tightly into her life that she never stopped to question where the comfort came from. The security, the stability. She just assumed it would always be there. That I would always be there. But not this time. Later that morning, while I was reviewing contracts at my desk, an email popped up in my personal inbox. The subject line read, Please don't ruin my wedding. I opened it without expectation. Mom, she wrote, I know you're upset about the livestream situation, but this is extreme. We've lost the venue deposit, and if we don't pay the remaining balance by end of day Paris time, the caterer walks. Michael's parents are beyond upset. They're saying this proves you can't be reasoned with. Please don't do this. We can talk about you attending the ceremony, but we need the funds first. There it was. They were willing to talk about letting me attend now that the money was gone. Not an apology, not a reflection, a negotiation. As if my presence at my own daughter's wedding could be bartered, bought, or sold, depending on how generous I was feeling. I didn't respond. I closed the email and turned back to my work. Around noon, James stopped by my desk. Lunch, he offered. That new Italian place just opened. I almost declined, as I usually did. But something in me shifted. Maybe it was the clarity of the past 24 hours. Maybe I just needed to sit somewhere that didn't ask anything from me. So I nodded. I'd like that. Over pasta, he told me about his grandkids and how exhausting but beautiful it was to chase after them. His eyes were soft, real. He paused and said gently, "Ellen, but you seem lighter today." I surprised myself. I told him everything about Sophia, the email, the wedding, the money, and what I did. When I finished, he didn't judge. He didn't try to fix anything. He just said, "Sometimes the hardest part of love is setting boundaries, especially with the people we've given the most to." He reached across the table and briefly squeezed my hand. "I think you did the right thing." For the first time in a long time, I believed that too. When I returned to my desk, there were more calls, more texts, but I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because for the first time, my silence spoke volumes. That evening, as I pulled into my driveway, the sky was already dimming. The porch light clicked on automatically. Everything looked still, peaceful even, but there was someone sitting on my front steps. As I got closer, I recognized her. Olivia. She stood up quickly, brushing invisible lint from her coat. Olivia had been Sophia's best friend since 5th grade. She spent countless weekends at our house, baking cookies, watching movies, giggling in sleeping bags until dawn. I hadn't seen her in years. "Mrs. Carter," she said softly, "I'm sorry to drop by like this." "It's fine," I replied, unlocking the door. "Would you like some tea?" She followed me into the kitchen, her eyes scanning the familiar walls like they held old echoes. I filled the kettle and waited. "Sophia sent you?" I finally asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, "She's a mess. They lost the venue. The floor is dropped out. Michael's parents are threatening to cancel the wedding." I said nothing, placing 2 mugs on the counter. "She's panicking," she continued. "She knows she messed up. She just doesn't know how to fix it." "Is that why you're here?" I asked. "To fix it?" She shook her head. "No, I'm here to ask, is there anything she can say or do to change your mind?" I paused. Was there? Would an apology change the way it felt to be excluded? To be used like a bank account? To be told you're not welcome unless your money is? I looked at Olivia, still young, still hopeful. "No," I said quietly. "There isn't." Her shoulders sagged. "Not even if she apologizes?" I handed her a mug of tea. "Words are easy, Olivia, especially when people are desperate. But the people who love you, they don't wait until you cut them off to see you." She looked down into her tea, nodding slowly. "I get it," she said. "Even if she doesn't." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Carter." "You don't need to be," I replied. We stood in silence for a moment. 2 women from different generations connected by one hard truth. Sometimes love has limits. Sometimes the only way to be seen is to walk away. Olivia didn't stay long. She didn't try to argue. She just thanked me, hugged me gently, and walked back into the night. And I finally closed the door on a version of myself I had long outgrown. The wedding never happened. Not as they planned, anyway. They scrambled to find another venue, but everything was either booked or far too expensive without the money I had once promised. According to Daniel, they ended up doing a small backyard ceremony weeks later, just a few relatives and Michael's parents. I wasn't invited, and this time I didn't need to be. In the weeks that followed, Sophia sent one more email. A long one, emotional. Half apology, half justification. I read it once, then archived it. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. There's a strange peace that comes with letting go. Not in rage, but in clarity. For the first time in decades, I woke up not wondering who needed something from me, not bracing for another guilt trip disguised as love. I made a new rule for myself. If my presence is negotiable, then so is my effort. I go to work. I read novels. I joined a pottery class. I have dinner with friends who see me, not what I can give them. And I've learned something I wish I'd known sooner. You don't have to burn yourself to keep others warm. If this story resonated with you, share it, comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Sometimes the strongest kind of love is the one you finally give to yourself.